Welcome to CCI Toronto's Condo Convos, casual chats about important condominium topics. Today we're talking about board management relations. Listen in and you will be on your way to financial and social success at your condo. With me today are Robert Weinberg from Personal Management, Andrea Lusk from Gardner Miller Arnold, and David Delella from Horlick Levitt Delella, and my name is Stefan Nespoli from Edison Engineers. So condominiums are complex entities, I think we would all agree, and it's important to have a strong leadership group sort of steering the ship. So we're talking about the relationship between the board of directors and the condominium manager or the property management company. So why don't we start our discussion at the beginning. Say a new condo gets built, there's a board that's in place, first property manager in the door. What sort of challenges might they face, Rob?
Well, the challenge is initially the initial relationship that you're building between a newly elected board of directors, it's no longer the declarant board, and the management company. There's a perception in the industry that the management company that comes in, the first one in the door, is somehow related to the developer. Boards and the owners don't realize that this is a tender process for most developers, and just like any other contract. So it's getting that first understanding that you're really there to help the owners and to help guide the board, many of whom have never been in this position before. It's their first home, it's their first condo experience, if it's not their first home, so we have to deal with that. After that, it's helping them understand about the contracts that are in place and how they got into place. Management companies are most successful if they can show the boards of directors that there were quotations, whether it's for pest control or odor control or landscaping, that it wasn't just the manager's favorite company. So when you deal with that in an open and friendly basis and you guide the board members, it becomes very successful where you can pull them off that concept that you're just working strictly for the declarant. And as you move forward, the relationships build. And as long as we're not dealing with transient board members who are there just to flip their units and try to get the most out of them and keep the maintenance fees as low as possible, you have an excellent relationship.
So there's a lot of moving parts there. Any tips on how to sort of guide their way through that process?
I think a lot of boards panic at that stage because you're in the turnover process, and that is when there's the opportunity under the Condo Act to get rid of a whole bunch of contracts really quickly, in addition to all the other stuff the boards are dealing with at that time. So a tip to boards and managers in this stage is the manager's here to help the board with all the moving parts that are happening at that time. And communication is important, and good communication and client-facing relationships at this stage and in the management board stage are going to get you through most of the problems and issues and concerns.
Okay, so some good guidelines, but...
Absolutely, maybe I'll jump in here.
Sure.
You know, like any relationship, expectations are very important. In the same way that a cohabitation agreement or a marriage contract might be good for couples, okay? A management agreement's a great idea for a condominium corporation. In fact, the Condominium Management Services Act, it actually requires a written contract from a manager for any of their clients, and that's important. And those agreements, they go a long way in establishing who does what and setting a division of labor, okay? Now, Rob, you know, there's no set standard agreement out there, okay? There's no boilerplate, but there are a few things that you should look for in your agreements or have your lawyers look for in your agreements. One thing is this: a contract should disclose the insurance, the type of insurance, and the amount of insurance your manager has. That's important, and it's actually mandated by the Act now, okay? A few other things: the length of the term, the standard provisions for renewal of the term, periodic increases, things like fees. You may want to look at things with respect to termination, with cause and without cause. The manager's spending authority. Whether it's the management or the lawyer that deals with the notice of lien, also important. Maybe one of the most important things is the on-site hours and days. When are they going to be there? And can that be changed without board approval? So that's a few things that will set expectations and help keep things on track.
Yeah, so having things spelled out in a bit more detail.
Absolutely.
Helps make the relationship slide along smoothly. Great, so we've established, we have a working relationship now. We've got our contract in place. Everybody understands what the expectations are for communication, things like that. But I'm sort of starting to get the feeling that communication is going to be a big part of this. So as the relationship continues to develop, inevitably there are going to be some bumps in the road. And that might be internal pressures. That might be a new board member turns over and there's some conflict there, or maybe it's external pressures from an ownership group or an individual owner. So What advice can we give to boards and managers as they continue to develop their relationship?
So in real estate, they have a saying, location, 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 right? For board management relations, it's exactly what you just said, communication, communication, communication. And that's especially important when things start to go wrong. That consistent, timely communication between management, their board, and the lawyers, it can help deal with a problem when that problem's small before it gets out of control, okay? We know that we have these monthly board meetings when managers are there. Oftentimes there's weekly updates by email. Sometimes there's a board liaison that deals with managers on a regular basis. But when you have a real problem, a significant problem, nothing beats face-to-face, okay? That in-person connection solves problems. Now, Rob, I know the other day we were talking, and I've heard this out in the field, there's a shortage of managers.
Yes,
And that can create a situation where you don't have enough on-site hours. And when you don't have that, there isn't that regular interaction, communication, and expectations may not be met. So that's something that has to be dealt with industry-wide.
Yeah, and I think there's other pressures. The licensing has created an unintended consequence of increased salary demands for managers, and therefore the management companies may be limited contractually as to how much they can charge, and they may not have something in their contract saying how many hours they have to be on site, so they're pulling the staff back. That translates or could translate into less effective management of a property. And remembering, when people are watching this video, they may be thinking it's only a residential condo. But we have vacant land condos, residential high-rise, townhouses, commercial condos, retail condos, office condos. We get directors from all over. So the concept here is, when we're communicating, we have to understand who our audience is. And the one failing that I find in the communication piece is just not getting back to them at all. Most owners, most directors will accept, you know what, I have to look into this. Just say something. Don't ignore them. When you start ignoring your client base as a property management company or as a property management professional, you're going to lose your clients.
That's where most of the complaints come from, right? From
Yes.
unit owners that I wrote to the manager, and it's been 2 days or 1 hour or whatever. Yeah. And obviously some of those scenarios do require an immediate response. Yes. But others can wait, and others do also require board approval. So to tack on to what you were saying, Dave, I guess one of the best practices is, you have your contract, communication is important. Perhaps empower the manager by having a policy about communications, how quickly the manager will respond, having a canned response that the board approves, i.e. the board meets every third Thursday of the month, and your response, your query will be reviewed then. And also, just very minor, but best practice is to have rules about harassment and to have an Occupational Health and Safety Act policy and program, because those are going to protect the board and managers from unit owners that really do get nasty over things that might be incidental. And the board is certainly empowered to do that type of a thing. And I know in my practice, when we get these types of complaints from managers and boards that unit owner is going off the rails, if there's no harassment rule in place, and if there's no communication policy or sort of standard, it's very hard to enforce those until that type of thing is passed.
And if I could just add one thing here, with the advent of so many different web portals available to the condominium corporations, no matter what type of corporation they are, if the board of directors would agree to a policy whereby all communication must be in written form, other than an emergency, setting a policy of 48 hours response time, whatever it might be. The nice thing about all of these services, and there are many companies that provide these web portals, the board of directors can see all the communication. The owners will know when they're getting communicated with, and everyone will see exactly what was said or wasn't said. So that actually goes back to head office of management companies when they're actually reviewing the information on the various web portals. Are their managers succeeding or not? That's an important thing, because really the management company it's an entire body of people. It's not just the site manager. It's everybody from that all the way to head office to a CEO, and everybody relies on successful relationships. Communicate. No matter what else you do, as long as you communicate, that's half the battle right there.
Right. Do you find that the advent of these web portals is helping with an influx of maybe new managers or shortage of managers and sort of easing the communication, just to tie back to what David said?
I think it does if you can let your manager know that they're not going to have to use 5 different methods of communication.
Right.
The problem happened when these websites came out. Now I've got to check my email, I've got to check the website, I've got to check the special just board communication, I've got my phone at the office. It's too much, and especially because managers are being asked to do more and more and more. They have to understand, under our licensing, we're limited to what we actually can do. We can't practice another profession without a license, so they have to be able to say, I'm going to check my email every day, I'm going to check my website every day, my phone I'll check once a day, whatever it is. But they're going to communicate, get back, and do the thing that they're allowed to do under their license.
Right.
And everything else has to go back to the board or their lawyer.
Well, with all these tools, I can't imagine a relationship breaking down between a condo manager and a board, but unfortunately that's not the reality that we live in. What advice would you give to boards that are maybe looking to make a change, or in instances where the relationship has broken down?
Well, maybe I'll jump in there. So, look, endings by their very nature are often not very good, okay? But agreements can make those endings go a little bit more smoothly. So most condominium contracts with managers have termination clauses where things can be terminated on a specified number of days, okay? They also have payment in lieu of that notice where it's the condominium corporation that's carrying out the termination, okay? So if it's the condominium corporation that's terminating the manager, they're either going to be giving time or they're going to be giving money, okay, depending on what the agreement says. Most of these management agreements now also contain a for-cause provision. So where the manager has done something wrong or allegedly done something wrong, it will be spelled out in the agreement, or should be rather, what those specified for-cause items are, okay? Some of them could be gross negligence, insubordination, recklessness, bankruptcy, unauthorized assignment of the management duties. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to determine if there's been a for-cause event, but at least it narrows it, makes that process more smooth. Some agreements, and I think this was mentioned before, that are pre-turnover agreements can be canceled without a termination clause. Management agreements are one of them. You can do it on 60 days notice, okay? Finally, the Condo Act. Section 130 of the Condo Act deals with mediation and arbitration. Mediation and arbitration applies to management agreements. I don't know what you two have seen out there. I haven't actually seen a Section 132 mediation arbitration with management agreements. For some reason, it doesn't seem to happen in the real world, but it is an agreement that's subject to 132. So, bottom line, Section 132 and the management agreement termination clauses can make that process easier when it does happen.
Right. And so when they're committed to making this change and they follow this process, is it important to reflect on maybe where the relationship broke down or what might have gone wrong?
I certainly think so. When I go into a proposal meeting, and it's strange that I say this to prospective clients, but I say every relationship ends. Mm-hmm. They end by death or they end by divorce. That's just the way it is in this world. So the death could be a bankruptcy of a management company. The divorce is obviously a termination. The idea here is find out what's going wrong. Is it a bad property manager? They're just not doing their job. They're not showing up. Is it the back office of the management company not preparing financial statements in time or often enough, or the boards aren't even getting them? Is it the bad board member? Is it the president for life who just wants things to run the way they want to run? It could be anything. This is human relations. So the idea is to try to pinpoint what it is. Change is hard. And many boards think, well, it's just them going through the change. No, it's every owner that has to deal with another company dealing with their pre-authorized payment, another manager in the door. How many times we have to go through change? There's no consistency. And when you have corporations that have no consistency in the services being provided, those are not successful financially or physically. They just can't be. And we see that when we're doing walkthroughs of buildings during proposal time. So my recommendation is don't look for the door. Always try to fix something first.
You don't want to be that high turnover building that gets a stigma. Mm-hmm. And I mean, your management is your liaison with contractors half the time. And so whether, if a new manager is coming in the door and sees that there have been 4 managers in the past 3 years, that might indicate the type of manager you can get as a board seeking a new manager. the management companies also have these relationships with contractors, and they know that the business is small, and the quality companies are also smaller. People will know. It'll be pretty obvious that there's been this high turnover. So one of the things that I always tell boards is, if it's your forward-facing site admin or the manager that's the problem, see if they can be swapped out, see if they can be mentored, see if there's a way to fix that client-facing issue before you tank the whole deal, because the continuity aspect is real. These people manage the biggest asset, and so you want to keep that relationship healthy and trust in it.
And anyone who's listened to my last 2 years at the ACMO conference, where I've been participating in the sessions, I've told management company owners that have been in the audience, don't be afraid to terminate your contracts. Because at the end of the day, it's really hard to find good managers now. With the advent of licensing, and the managers it's a manager's market now, they can choose where they want to go. We're going to have more and more trouble unless something changes finding the good manager. So if you have that good manager, as you said, you'll find another home for them pretty quickly, another building, another site. And maybe that client just is not manageable. Not every client is. We'd like to hope they are and that we could turn them around. But it is a problem in the industry, and we need to protect our staff. As much as we need to protect our businesses, we need to hold these people in good regard. We need them, and we want to mentor them and educate them, but we have to make sure that we're looking at all sides of the situation.
And also remember, for condos, there's one board. That's it there. In a management company, there's often people who may be able to be swapped out if there's a personality conflict or, response issues, et cetera, et cetera.
Right on. So it sounds like any relationship, these take work, and the work can be worth it if you can improve the relationship there. And to go back to what David said, communicate seems to be the message. So thank you for coming in today. Thank Robert, Andrea, and David. I'm Stefan Nespoli, and thanks for watching.